I look at Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, John Tavares, and only one word comes to mind: loser. These guys are losers. You can't have Mitch Marner at 14/8, and he's a UFA. Mitchie was non-committal post-game on coming back. I don't think he's going to. I think he's not built for this. Go play in Utah. Have fun.
The three universal truths of life are death, taxes, and Maple Leaf fans blaming Mitch Marner for every problem their team faces. Well, one of those certainties is finally coming to an end, as Marner reportedly will be choosing a new team this offseason. And although his career so far has been highlighted by franchise records, all-star honors, and offensive totals on par with the NHL's best, Toronto fans can't seem to say goodbye to him quickly enough. So are their criticisms based, and more importantly, should teams be throwing Leon Draisaitl-esque money at Mitch Marner? To answer that, we'll first break down Marner's career to understand the caliber of player that he is. We will then meticulously discuss the many criticisms around him and assess whether each is unfounded. And finally, we will answer the big question of whether teams like the Blackhawks should be entering a bidding war for the talented forward. So without any further ado, let's begin with a discussion of Marner's career achievements to this point. Marner burst onto the NHL scene as a 19-year-old rookie in 2016, as he posted 61 points in 77 games and set a Maple Leafs franchise record for assists by a rookie with 42 in the process. That season saw three of the so-called Core Four make their NHL debuts, as Marner, Austin Matthews, and William Nylander all scored 60 points that year, making the Leafs the second team since 1981 to have three different rookies hit that milestone in the same season. More importantly, however, the Core 3 helped the Maple Leafs reach the playoffs for only the second time in the previous 12 seasons, where Marner scored a goal in his very first career playoff shift en route to finishing the 6-game series with 4 total points. Although his rookie season was a resounding success, the foundations of the absurd off-the-ice aspects of Toronto were also rearing their ugly head. In his rookie season, Marner was asked by his head coach, Mike Babcock, to rate everyone on the team's work ethic, which is just an absurd request to make of a teenage rookie. Marner humbly placed himself last on the list, but placed line mate Tyler Bozak and several other respected Maple Leafs right above him at the bottom of the list. To add to this absurdity, Mike Babcock then took Marner's list and publicized it to the rest of the team as if to intentionally put a target on the rookie's back. Luckily, none of the veterans took it to heart, but it was an early sign that Marner's career would be affected by plenty of off-the-ice noise. In any case, Marner quickly proved that his rookie season success was not a fluke, as he followed it up with an even better sophomore season. He led the Maple Leafs in both assists with 47 and total points with 69. Nice. He also became the first Leafs player to post a 5-point game since 2009 and continued his spectacular performances into the postseason, as his 6-game point streak between Games 2 and Game 7 of Round 1 made him the first Leaf to have even a 5-game playoff point streak since Brian Leetch in 2004. Unfortunately, Marner's efforts were not enough, as the Leafs fell to the Bruins in heartbreaking fashion. That following season, Marner rounded out his regular season performances even more, as he began playing on the first penalty kill unit as well. This added role did not diminish his offensive impact, as he had 22 assists in the first 24 games of the season, a pace topped in the past 2 decades only by Mario Lemieux. He ended the season with 94 points, which led the Maple Leafs by far. Unfortunately, Toronto ran into the Bruins in the first round for the second straight season, and this time they completely neutralized Marner, who was held to 4 total points in the 7-game series loss. In many ways, this season was a perfect microcosm of Marner's career in Toronto as a whole. As the years progressed, he became a better and better regular season player, and he proved every criticism wrong in the process. Some people accused him of being a secondary assist merchant, but Marner put up 66 primary assists in the past 3 years, which is 5th in the NHL in that category. Some people accused him of being the best 100-point scorer to never reach the 100-point mark, which is an absurd criticism since he's now scored at a 100-point pace over the last 6 seasons. But to put the cherry on top, he put up 100 points this past season while playing out of position on the point of a 5-forward power play unit. Some people accuse him of merely profiting from Matthews' production after the sniper scored 69 goals 2 seasons ago, but Marner put up his 100-point season during the worst goal-scoring season of Matthews' career. Some people accuse him of being a power play merchant, but Marner also put up 67 even strength points this season, which was 8th in the NHL and above names like Sidney Crosby, Artemi Panarin, Mikko Rantanen, Jack Eichel, and 12 more than any other member of the core 4. Some people accuse him of being a purely offensive winger, but Marner routinely plays on the first PK unit, has scored 10 shorthanded goals in his career, and finished 7th in the league this season in Selke voting. But the main criticisms around Marner's game stem from his playoff performances, and to be honest, those do indeed have some basis. He has made a series of very costly mistakes in the playoffs that have not helped him gain favor with the Maple Leaf faithful. Marner only put up 4 points in the 5-game upset loss to the Blue Jackets in the qualifying series of 2020. He also only had 4 points and a crucial series-defining mental lapse in the 3-1 choke to the heavy underdog Montreal Canadiens, and had 3 points in another 7-game heartbreak to the Boston Bruins last year. If you're a fan of Maple Leaf content creators, you probably know that he has a bit of a reputation for turtling away from contact in the corners and for blind floaty backhand passes. But it's also important to contextualize all of these criticisms by pointing out that he is an easy person to blame for much larger organizational issues. The reality is that compared to the other core 4 members, Mitch Marner has been the best playoff point producer with 0.9 points per game. He's been at or above a point per game pace in the playoffs in 3 of the past 4 seasons, is a career +9 in the playoffs, has 23 power play points and 4 game-winning goals, and takes on unusually difficult defensive assignments for an offensive superstar. Since he made his NHL debut in 2016, he is 10th in the NHL in playoff assists per game among players with at least 40 games played. And yet the Maple Leafs have still never made it past the second round in his career. The reality is that there is not a single playoff team in the NHL that relies more on their top 3 to 4 forwards than Toronto does. And the reason for that is the rest of the team is subpar. Morgan Rielly has been the #1 defenseman for the core 4's entire careers, and he's never been a #1 caliber defenseman. The Leafs tried to overcompensate for that this season by giving term to a 34-year-old defenseman in Chris Tanev, trading for Brendan Carlo, and acquiring Jake McCabe, but it simply did not work. Usually, Toronto's blue line is anemic defensively, but this patchwork blue line was completely dysfunctional offensively, as they did not rank in the top 12 in the NHL in any puck-moving metric this season. They blocked shots and did basically nothing else. This complete lack of offensive contribution from the back end put even more pressure on the core 4. Because no defenseman was capable of playing on the first power play unit, Toronto was forced to run a 5-forward line that was great in possession, but susceptible to shorthanded chances against. Sure enough, they allowed 2 shorthanded goals in these playoffs. To make matters worse, the bottom 6 of the team was extremely poor, as it's been throughout the core 4's tenure. So while teams are able to roll out 4 dedicated identity and defensive lines, the Maple Leafs rely entirely on their top 6 forwards to do everything. The 2 best defensive players on the team are Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner. The 2 players most responsible for producing offense are, say it with me, Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner. The core 4 is responsible for producing all of the offense for the entire regular season and all of the offense for the entire postseason. And while teams like Florida are acquiring Brad Marchand and Seth Jones, and teams like Dallas are acquiring Mikko Rantanen to elevate already deep rosters, a team like Toronto is forced to spend a first-round pick on Scott Laughton, who somehow made them even worse. So yes, Mitch Marner may be partially to blame for the Leafs' playoff struggles, but it's a critical error to build a team with as many holes as the Maple Leafs have and to trust 4-star players to just overcome them all. And yes, Marner led a tough contract negotiation the last time around when others may have accepted a hometown discount, And yes, he did turn down a trade to the Hurricanes because his wife was in her third trimester, but no, it's not Marner's fault that the Maple Leafs ended their rebuild without filling most of their crucial holes. Their subsequent struggles in the playoffs does not mean that Marner is inherently a playoff choker or a loser. In fact, at the time of the Maple Leafs elimination this season, Marner had the 6th most points in the entire playoffs. His 13 points at the time was higher than anybody on the Panthers, the Hurricanes, or the Capitals. Keep in mind that 2 of those 3 teams went on to the conference finals, and one of them just won back-to-back Stanley Cups while being considered by most to be the blueprint for every other NHL team to follow. Meanwhile, Marner was booed home by his own fans after yet another round 2 exit. It's easy and convenient to blame your star players for everything, and it's much harder to accept that this team was simply not that good. And if they were wearing any crest other than the maple leaf on their chest, the expectations for the team would be much lower than they were. This was a team with below average expected goals throughout the season. They were carried by excellent goaltending until their number 1 goaltender got injured in the playoffs, and they still were the only team to take the defending champion Florida Panthers to 7 games. If this was any other team, the season in a vacuum would be an overachievement. But because it's Toronto, the deep issues in roster construction are all somehow just Mitch Marner's fault. I am confident that Marner will be considered an elite playoff performer wherever he goes next. When Phil Kessel left Toronto, he immediately won back-to-back Stanley Cups. When Nazem Kadri, who was famous for being called a liability in the playoffs for his constant suspensions, left Toronto, well, I'll let him speak for himself. Take a listen.
You know, for everyone that thought I was a liability in the playoffs, you kiss my ass.
Congratulations.
So is Mitch Marner worth a bidding war that can surpass $14 million per season? Well, the thing to note immediately is that it is sacrilegious that a player of this caliber is even reaching unrestricted free agency. I would say that he's the best unrestricted free agent since John Tavares, but he's arguably even better. He is an elite, consistent 100-point Selke caliber winger that would immediately be the best player on the majority of NHL teams, and he is still in his prime. So the answer is, if you're already a playoff team and you're able to find the salary cap for him, of course he's worth it. You won't ever find a player of the caliber of Marner in the prime of his career without trading multiple enormous assets for him. So for me, there are 2 teams that come to mind immediately. The first team is the Carolina Hurricanes. This is a team that has hit the same huge wall in the Eastern Conference that Toronto has hit, and without major changes, it's hard to see them ever surpassing the powerhouse Florida Panthers. Now, it's not a secret that Carolina desperately wants a superstar. The Mikko Rantanen saga did not work out, but it just further reinforces Eric Tulski's desire for a big name at the top of their roster. A player like Mitch Marner could be that missing piece. Carolina already has a strong identity led by their coach and a deep team that plays a playoff style. Sebastian Aho is an excellent two-way center that would take defensive responsibility away from Marner. The team has a lot of identity pieces throughout the lineup, including 200-foot players like Logan Stankoven and Seth Jarvis, and middle six scorers like Andrei Svechnikov and Taylor Hall. In addition, Rod Brind'Amour is very good at balancing ice time throughout all 4 lines, so Marner could theoretically enter the playoffs more well rested in Carolina than he did in Toronto. The one big issue with this fit is that according to Elliot Friedman, Marner would likely want to move to the Western Conference, and it's hard to see him get excited to face the Florida Panthers every season with a new team. And that makes this next team a great fit, and that is the Anaheim Ducks. The Ducks finished with 80 points this past season despite a slow start, and they hovered around a wild card spot for a while before finishing the season 15 points out of a playoff spot. The team has a great combination of young players like Cutter Gauthier and Mason McTavish, players entering their theoretical primes like Jackson Lacombe and Trevor Zegras, and veterans like the recently acquired Chris Kreider. The fact that they went out of their way to hire Joel Quenneville shows that they're serious about making the playoffs and never looking back, and they have $32 million of projected cap space this season to make that happen. Now that number is a bit deceptive since they do need to bring back Mason McTavish and Lucas Dostal as restricted free agents this summer and have basically every single other player up for a contract next offseason, but they still have plenty of flexibility to make an aggressive move like this. But Carolina and Anaheim will not be alone. 2 other reported interested teams are Vegas and Los Angeles, so there will definitely be a bidding war for his services. Unfortunately, it's hard to see the Blackhawks being a serious part of that. Scott Powers and Mark Lazarus recently reported that the Hawks don't see Marner as the type that you can win in the playoffs with, which, to be blunt, is a take that I believe is stupid, unequivocally incorrect, and will age terribly. Apart from the absurdity of the second worst team in the NHL nitpicking about potential playoff fits, Mitch Marner's skill set perfectly complements Connor Bedard's skill set. Bedard is theoretically more of a shooter than a playmaker. Marner is one of the best defensive wingers in the NHL, and both players are at their best offensively when they're playing off other skilled players. Now look, it's true that in the timeline of the rebuild, this may not be the perfect ideal time to sign a game-wrecking superstar. Because many of the team's top prospects, especially on the back end, are still not NHL ready, Marner is maybe a couple years older than the ideal addition. After all, the perfect example of the harms of ending a rebuild too quickly are the Toronto Maple Leafs, who built around 3 elite offensive forwards and then ended their rebuild with a Tavares signing before ever investing in their bottom 6 and blue line. But Chicago is built in the exact opposite way. The Hawks pipeline has a plethora of bottom 6 and middle 6 talent, and arguably the best blue line of any rebuilding team. But unlike the early Maple Leafs, the Hawks are lacking in high-end talent alongside Connor Bedard. This would theoretically be the perfect signing to break your rules for. The odds that any drafted player, even if they were picked first overall, reaches Mitch Marner's level of overall impact are incredibly slim. And the opportunity to acquire a player like him without even giving up assets is unheard of. But the elephant in the room is that there is no real reason for Mitch Marner to forego the opportunity to cash out with a playoff contender to sign with a rebuilding team like the Hawks instead. Marner is acutely aware of his reputation in league circles, and I have no doubt that he's eager to get back to the playoffs as soon as possible with a better built team to prove every hater wrong. The only thing the Blackhawks could bring to the table to sway him away from that mission is money, and contending teams will likely pay Marner just as much as the Blackhawks would. I would love to see Marner in Blackhawks colors, I just don't see it happening for a number of reasons. But do you think that Mitch Marner is worth a massive contract on the open market? Let me know what you think, and I'll see you down in the comment section and in the next video. Until next time.